Let's talk about Detroit for a second. We've seen a lot in the past few decades, and no city was hit harder in the recession than we were. But we've grown and changed, and I want to talk about the future of Detroit, a greener Detroit. We are in a renaissance period. Jobs are filling the city. We have restaurants popping up all over the place. Nightlife like we haven't seen in decades. And we're finally starting to see a massive growth in residential in downtown Detroit. But we still have problems, and the city's youth is in trouble. And some of the most basic needs that we take for granted, our kids are not receiving. Schools are in disrepair. Teachers are not able to devote the time to science, technology, engineering, and math. Instead, they're struggling to find the most basic resources for their students. There's not enough quality food in the city of Detroit for our children. Quality food like tomatoes, lettuce, and potatoes are 46% more expensive than just a few miles away in the suburbs. Quality and quantity of food are still big issues in the city of Detroit, and it makes a challenging environment for our kids. But there's a solution. Let's talk about urban farming for a second. That's a thing in Detroit, and that's pretty cool. But when we think about community farms, we think about hipsters, like this guy, or this guy. These guys are growing their heirloom tomatoes, vaping, and doing yoga. And dude, you're just annoying everybody. So if urban farming is so popular in Detroit, why hasn't it resolved some of our major issues in the city? Because it's not profitable. In order to be profitable, traditional soil-based farming requires large amounts of land. Urban farming is truncated, and there's lots of plots all over the city that don't offer the economies of scales of a traditional farm. Assuming you did have large enough profitable economies of scales, it would also require huge machinery to harvest all the crops, including all the transportation to send the crops from farm to table. There's a lot of wasted water when it comes to traditional farming. And by the way, you can't grow food all year round, which is perfect because I only eat between May and October every year. Finally, the farms are run by this guy who has no commercial farming experience. So check this out. We have a ton of properties downtown. But here's what you're thinking. Kevin, how are we going to farm there? Those are just buildings. Here's the secret. We're going to slap vertical farms on the top of all of our properties and change the face of the city. So what makes this idea so great and different? It's not because of this new age hippie. It's because it is designed, built, and operated by the citizens of Detroit. Are you getting excited and you want to hear how this all could potentially work? Let's start with hydroponics, or the ability to grow plants without soil in a liquid medium, and combine it with aquaculture, a fancy word for fish farming. By combining the two, we get a new vertical farming technique called aquaponics. Aquaponics is a symbiotic relationship between plants and animals that produces organic fish and produce that is more eco-friendly and sustainable than traditional farming. In fact, aquaponics produces substantially more produce per unit of space than traditional farming. We're talking 3, 4, 5 times the amount. And some iterations of aquaponics use 95% less water than traditional farming, which is huge. And you know what's super important? Saving water. Another cool side effect is we're producing mass amounts of fish without depleting lakes and oceans of fish. And fish is delicious, especially with beer batter. What we're left with is an indoor, that means no pesticides, sustainable farming solution available to us right downtown. Let's take a fish. In this case, we have a tilapia, but it could be a lake trout or even a swai. We feed the fish and they in turn produce waste in the form of ammonia, or NH3, which is suspended in the water. We then pump that water over to beneficial bacteria who takes that ammonia and converts it into NO3, or nitrate. But Kevin, isn't nitrate a really important fertilizer for crops? Yes, it totally is, and that's the secret to this technique. We have effectively created our own fertilizer produced from our fish that we'll then in turn use to provide to our plants. Once the bacteria has converted the water into nitrate, we pump that water up to the plants to use, who then in turn absorb it and grow and produce vegetables. Once the nitrate has been absorbed by the plants, we take that fresh water and send it back to the fish. As a result, we have produce and fish produced in the same system with minimal resources. Okay, well then what do you feed the fish with? Well, we will have to feed some commercial food, but we can actually use some of the produce that we produce to feed the fish, which is really cool. And all the energy it takes to run these systems is very minimal. We can use sustainable technology, including solar panels, wind, and collecting rainwater to have these systems essentially carbon neutral. You know the fountain in CompuWare? Less energy than that to run these systems. So imagine a building, and we slap a bunch of greenhouses right on top of it where the sun can reach the plants and we don't need electricity to create artificial sunlight. We then put a bunch of fish rearing containers on the floor directly underneath the greenhouses. Finally, we house the filtration systems on the same floor where we'll house the beneficial bacteria that will convert ammonia into nitrate. And we then circulate the water between the floors. All the while, our team members or tenants will be working on the floors below. Without even suspecting it, the food they might eat for lunch may actually be growing a few floors above them. Commercial vertical farming has found a lot of success around the world in the past few years. There's an underground farm in downtown London that creates food for local restaurants. There's a farm in New Jersey that's producing 2 million pounds of lettuce every year using vertical farming techniques. Yup, I said million pounds, not dozens, millions of pounds of sustainable, eco-friendly food. There are even recorded instances of this technique being used in places like the Middle East to get food in times of war. And my vision is to bring this technique to every major city around the world, starting with Detroit. The idea with this whole concept is to have farm-to-table food faster than ever, while still reducing costs and producing an organic product. The fish and produce can then be sold at various places around Detroit, including restaurants, grocery stores, Quicken Loans cafeterias, Pay What You Can kiosks, which is an idea popularized by Panera, where customers only pay what they can pay for, reducing localized hunger while still receiving revenue from customers who are willing to pay. Finally, a specific percentage of food every month would be donated to food banks and school lunches around Detroit to resolve serious issues that plague our city. Think of it like this. For every lettuce head you buy, we donate another lettuce head to a food bank or a school lunch. Along with growing food and tackling food issues in Detroit, we have additional opportunities, such as teaching kids about biological processes just like this, and, perhaps more importantly, educating kids about nutrition. We can sell excess nitrates as organic fertilizer. And finally, we can change the world's view of our skyline. Have you noticed that this company is really not so much about the urban farming? I mean, it is a little bit, right? But the purpose is to reduce hunger and provide a venue for DPS kids and teenagers to experience STEM learning. This is about tackling two socioeconomic issues that face Detroiters on a daily basis. Educating kids about science, technology, engineering, and math. And here's the best part. We're going to hire juniors and seniors from Detroit Public Schools to be engineers, biologists, and educators. Let's show DPS high schoolers the importance of working in the STEM field. Bring them into the family of companies and give them a badge. Make them a team member. This is my true vision for this company. Aquaponics is a really great concept, but it's how we use this concept that's going to revolutionize Detroit. This is my future vision for Detroit, and it's called Green Skylines.